Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience this evening. As always, technical difficulties. So, my name is Scott Bradley. I'm the Executive Director of your Thunder Bay Museum. Thank you for joining us in person and to those who are able to log in on Zoom. I would like to begin tonight by acknowledging the original custodians of this land, paying our respects to the elders past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture, and the hopes of Indigenous peoples. We also recognize that we are meeting on the traditional land of Fort William First Nation, signatory to the Robinson-Superior Treaty of 1850, and to acknowledge the role of the Métis settlement in the development of our community. So if you're not aware, for some housekeeping, there is a restroom directly out the back door, and there's another one down on the second floor if you need it. Just know that this lecture is being recorded, and so those of you joining us online, we cannot see you nor hear you. And for all the rest of you here tonight, please try and silence your cell phones, electronic devices, your boombox, CD players, and all those things. There will be refreshments brought up here in a little while, so please do enjoy the coffee and snacks. And there will be time for questions and answers after the presentation. So tonight's lecture is sponsored by Lakehead University's Department of History. Moving on from that sheet. So tonight's speaker is Kelly Saxberg. Kelly is a film producer, director, editor, and cinematographer who has worked on well over 100 films. She works in English, French, Spanish, and Finnish. Her works have received and been nominated for many prestigious film awards. Kelly is actively involved in the Friends of the Finnish Labor Temple and their many projects. Recently, the interactive website, www.rosiesofthenorth.ca, and for the educational streaming channel, www.researchtv.ca. She was also founding member of the Bay Street Film Festival, now known as Vox Popular Media Arts Festival. And as a contract lecturer with Lakehead University's History Department, Kelly has assist students in developing a love of film. She has mentored dozens of emerging filmmakers through her flash frame workshops and collaborative film projects. So please join me in a warm welcome for Kelly Saxberg and a round of applause.
Okay. I even have a little timer. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Scott, and it's so great to be here among many friends and family. I know everybody here, it feels like. So yeah, this is so thrilling to be able to talk about this project. This project all began with a story that I heard that there was a famous writer living here in Thunder Bay, Sheila Burnford. Like, who knew? And so maybe I'll just begin by, we'll just go through this little PowerPoint. This is a PowerPoint I made. I've taken out a few things, but I made this to try to get funding for this project. A Tale of Two Qallunaat, it originally was called A Tale of Two Qallunaat, and that's a word that Sheila learned when she went to the Arctic. And it basically means non-Inuit or English speakers or outsiders. But by the time that we finally got to go up there in 2022, the proper term is Qallunaat. So we learned that. But Michael, if you want to just go to the next slide. And this is actually a frame grab from Sheila's film that she took, and we're going to see some clips of that film that she took in 1971. So here's our synopsis. This is it's a 1-hour documentary about the legacy of two women artists who traveled to the Arctic in the early 70s and what happens when elders and youth come in contact with their unique record of the past that these two women have left. And can I go to the next one? And you can see these are sketchy. These are some of Susan's sketches.
There's like a 4-second lag. So.
Oh, there is? Oh, okay. Okay. And so anyway, so this is the long synopsis, but basically what it was telling to our funders was that all the resources that we had to make this film, which makes it really special. First of all, Jonquil Covello, when we got in touch with her, that's Sheila's daughter, one of three, we met up with her in Yellowknife, and lo and behold, she had everything that her mom left behind stored in her storage room. And it was just all these dozens of boxes and everything. And she was so thrilled that somebody was interested in them, because she figured that they would have all ended up in the landfill if there hadn't been some interested filmmakers and Ron Harpel, my husband, an academic who saw the value in all those resources. And then when the Burnford sisters agreed to start sending us all this material, then we got in touch with the Ross family and Susan Ross, and then they donated also to the project all of these sketches, but not just all her sketchbooks, but all her documentation, her applications, her clippings, slides of all her paintings and etchings and all that material. So here we have, like, we've got film footage, we've got photographs, we've got paintings and sketches, and we have all of that. And what the idea behind it all was not only just to make a film, but also in a form of, to me, I think it's like one of the ultimate forms of reconciliation, is bringing those materials back to the community. And Pond Inlet, as you'll learn in this little talk, is just one of many communities that, especially that Susan visited. And Sheila actually visited quite a few as well. So we're really grateful for the entire family, both sides of these two incredible women. And then another thing that we learned through all of this is that Susan Ross, her mother, was Robert Flaherty's sister. So he was her uncle. And of course, the Flaherty family moved here, and he was a young man, and he started his exhibition, his trips and that, because he was working for his father, who was like a prospector and mining consultant and that. And of course, he landed up going up to Inukjuak and made Nanook of the North, which, if you haven't seen it, you can easily find it on the internet. But it's considered by almost every documentary filmmaker as the classic and the first documentary. Although there's lots of fakementary in there for creative purposes. It's nothing terrible or whatnot. But what Susan found out after she had a very good relationship with her uncle, who encouraged her in all matters, was that when he was making Nanook of the North, he also made a child with the female star of Nanook of the North, and who he called, I just can't remember her name right now, but anyway, she plays Nanook's wife, and she wasn't, because they were manufacturing this experience to show how Inuit lived in their traditional ways. You know, they already had guns by then, but of course they wanted to show off all the thousands of years of techniques that they had for survival. So anyway, so that is a whole very interesting side of this story, is that there are Inuit Flahertys, and most of them right now live in Iqaluit. Okay, so we can go on. So we, the first person that we kind of connected to in Pond Inlet, and you're going to meet her, a little clip of her, is Philippa Utuak, who is the community archivist. She's sort of retired, but anyway, after she arrived as a young woman, a nurse, just like the next year after Sheila and Susan, and she stayed there and married a local fellow, and then after her children were old enough, then she was looking for a job, and she got inspired to do this archive. And it's actually one of the more remarkable archives in the Arctic. So she was the one who corrected the Qallunaat and Qallunaat, and I was very grateful for that, and also gave us advice on when to come and how we should proceed with the filming. Yes, so our plan was to bring all this material to Pond Inlet, and our first thing was not to film, but to have a community meeting where we would show off all of this incredible work from these women, and we were able to organize that with the local high school. And you'll see a little bit later, but we brought basically a recreation of of a book of all the sketches from Pond Inlet from 1970, 71, and then 95, when Susan had her last visit there with her son, Tom Ross, which also coincided with them meeting the members, the quite large members and extended family of the Inuit Flaherty family. So, we didn't film it, but I have to say it was one of the most remarkable experiences of my life. And people were, even when we showed Sheila's film footage on a tiny little whiteboard, and we didn't have any technology there, you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody was just, I thought, oh, maybe they're going to be bored because there's a lot of images of birds and nature and all that kind of stuff. No, not at all. In fact, they were looking at it and noticing all the changes that had happened in all these years later, 50 years later. And the sketches, we had ordered, food, bannock, of course, and fruit and candies and everything, and coffee and tea for the elders. And then there was like a little moment of terror because as soon as they got that, but everybody wanted to touch that book, touch it. We had so carefully prepared it, and we were worried about coffee stains, tea stains. But in the end, no, it was all fine. We had a translator whose mother is in one of those sketches. And that was really wonderful. And we had not only elders, but we had youth. We had people from the community. Okay, if you want to go forward. Anyway, so these are some of our plans that we hope to do. And in fact, originally our plan was to bring Tom and Jonquil to the Pond Inlet, but ill health, and of course, we were shut down by the pandemic for several years before we could finally make our journey up there. You can, oh yeah. Yes, and so like the whole idea of the film will end with a final visit where we show the film, and we also want to encourage youth. The principal of the high school was like really enthusiastic about connecting the young people to those images of their relatives and their ancestors and their, many of the children that were sketched by Susan. Now they're all they're elders, they're grandparents, and to just continue on that those connections. And just the other day, I met a fellow who works, Daryl Macon, and he works for the park services up there. In that region, there's the most beautiful parks. And we can just jump ahead. Yeah, so I guess you probably all know about Sheila Burnford, but I've got a little introductory video that we're going to look at shortly. And then Sheila, one of the reasons that she was so fascinated or desired to go to the Arctic was, at first, she was really so, she came as a young child to Canada. She had relatives, and she met a young Indigenous girl. And that just started this whole love and fascination with Indigenous people. And she asked her parents, do we have any Indigenous relatives? And her mother said, yes, in fact, we do. Her great uncle was Scotty Phillip, who was Scottish from the Orkneys, I think. And he went to the United States and he married Sarah Larrabee, who was Cheyenne and Métis. And together they literally saved the buffalo. You can Google that. There's a million things about Scotty Phillip. And then, of course, she meets Susan, and Susan had this very famous uncle, Robert Flaherty, who not only made this most incredible film, but he also was a fantastic photographer and portrait photographer of Indigenous people. And there is a wonderful collection here in the museum that I have to say that this summer when we had Martha Flaherty come and to help us translate all our Inuktitut interviews that we did, she also came and visited the museum and saw her grandfather's work, which was pretty special. She also had a big family reunion with the Ross family. So yeah, he was very supportive of Susan, and then with that kind of desire to connect with Indigenous people, they finally got the courage, and they had the Rosses, the Flahertys, had a hunting camp on Whitefish Lake, which is a very famous wild rice harvesting lake, and they finally got their nerve up and went and approached the women. And asked if Susan could sketch them. And that began almost 2 decades of her going often and sketching because she was there often. And then that also led through Jack Pollock, them meeting Norval Morrisseau. And Norval Morrisseau really encouraged the two of them to go to Indigenous communities further afield. He basically gave them an invite, and that led to travels for almost a decade to different reserves in Northern Ontario. And and here she is on Whitefish Lake sketching, as she was always sketching. And then Sheila came up with this book, Without Reserve, which is a really fascinating read. I mean, there's some things, of course, it's a little dated in the language and that, but really, I think it was really remarkable for two women and what their whole goal of going to these places, which was basically just to hang around, learn. Anyway, so we'll hear a little bit more in the film about Susan's artistic career. And but yeah, she was a woman who was born at not long after the turn of the century, like Sheila, and it's a man's world, that art world. Where was she going to show it? Who was going to commission her? And in fact, she ended up having a very illustrious career and received the Order of Canada and the rest of it. So here we go. Just a few more. And I think what we can do now, just to give credit, we're not going to see these scenes yet, but Jonquil and Tom, they got together over their mother's works and art. And Jonquil lives in Yellowknife, actually, and Tom at Whitefish Lake. So without them, really, this project would have been absolutely nowhere. But we were able to, starting back in 2015, with a team of students and other people, digitize all of that material, and for the use of our films, but also convinced and the families to then donate all that material in turn to the Thunder Bay Museum so that everyone will have access to that, and there'll be a fantastic display. So it was the beginning of a very wonderful partnership between our film company and our charity, Friends of the Finnish Labor Temple. And but we certainly couldn't do it without the generosity of the Ross family and the Burnfords. I think we can go now. We can just skip ahead and we can just go to our first clip, which is just a short clip of Long Walk Home, the very first film we made about Sheila Burnford, just to give you a little reminder.
Bear with me a minute.
Yeah.
A long time ago, when I was a young teenager, my mother wrote a book. It was a book about our family's pets. So on a warm November evening in 1963, we found ourselves in a parade on the way to the world premiere of the Walt Disney adaptation of her book, The Incredible Journey. But this premiere was not in Hollywood. It was in our hometown of Port Arthur in northwestern Ontario. My mother was piped into a standing ovation. She was overwhelmed by the response. After all, it was the first book she'd ever written.
It's the first book I've written, yes. Always wanted to, but I was really lazy and never did anything about it. And then I found I had to write some scripts for a puppet club in Port Arthur. There was a deadline of the time they had to be ready, and I think it was that finally made me sit down and write. And from then on, I haven't been able to stop.
My mother, Sheila Philip Cochrane Every, was born in Glasgow, Scotland on May 11, 1916, during the Great War. This was her not-so-humble childhood home. As with many children of well-to-do parents, my mother was sent away at a young age to be educated at boarding schools in England and France. She even spent a year at school in Munich in 1933 when she was 17. It was the same year that Hitler took control. She never talked about what she witnessed that year in Germany, but when she returned, she signed up for classes with St. Andrew's Ambulance Association, where she learned first an ambulance. Next, she took up flying in a small plane, just for fun.
Oops. Probably should have downloaded them. Maybe just stop and start. Yeah.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Where's the original photograph?
Anyway, oh yeah, sorry.
Lasted until 6:30.
Oh.
Here that all the evacuation of children's ships had been lost, torpedoed, and only 15 children saved.
In 1948, the whole family boarded the HMS Aquitania and crossed the ocean to our new home in Canada. My father set up his pediatric practice in the Lakehead. That's what they called Port Arthur and Fort William then. Having arrived in Canada, Sheila looked to relaunch her long-established walking regimen in her new home. Soon she met someone whose sense of adventure was the same as her own. Susan Ross would become one of my mother's greatest friends. She was an artist of some great ability, although she would brush off any praise even as her acclaim grew. Her uncle was Robert Flaherty, the legendary filmmaker. He supported her earliest artistic pursuits. Susan sketched everything and everyone that she saw.
So that just gives you a very quick recap. You can watch that film, Long Walk Home, on researchtv.ca. And it really was about how Sheila became a writer and how she came to write The Incredible Journey about her own family pets. And anyway, it's filled with rich resources. And I have to say that we wouldn't have made anything near like the quality of that film without the incredible collection of 16 millimeter news film that had been donated to the Thunder Bay Museum. Now, it had languished in the basement for about at least 40 years. And but my background with the National Film Board, where I edited on film, we had some idea that we could probably figure out a way of transferring and digitizing all that film. And in fact, we have, and that's our Real Memories project, 500,000 feet of 16 millimeter film, most of it in pristine condition. And of course, the first thing that we found and transferred was that 10,000 person parade for the Walt Disney premiere of The Incredible Journey, which many people would remember that here in Thunder Bay. So, and then that became like a whole bunch of other projects, but we don't need to go into that. So the next thing on the agenda was once we got that film under our belts, then we started planning and applied for money and got a small grant from the Ontario Arts Council and the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation to do a Tale of Two Qallunaat. Now, before we even applied, Ron and myself flew up to Iqaluit and we met with the Flahertys, and we met with a translator that we knew, that we had gone, thanks to Chris Southcott and the RESDA projects that took us to Iqaluit. And we asked people, here, this is all the things that we have. Here's the story of these two women. Is it worthwhile? Should we do this film as ourselves? Like, should we make this film? And and Lazarus Ariak, the translator, we met with him, gave him Sheila's book, met with him and showed him all the photos and the film. And we did an interview with him afterwards, and he said, definitely, you need to do this, and this is why. And he gave us all the correct advice. We met with the Flaherty family, and they threw in their support that we should do this. And of course, right from the beginning, the most important thing, of course, is to be obviously working with a filmmaker. And that person, again, thanks to Chris Southcott, who sent me on a mission to do a short film project and sent me up during a workshop, I was able to meet Navalik. Maybe we can skip through if you can see Navalik. Anyway, Navalik Tolaganik. And she agreed to be we stayed in touch for a decade. And then finally, she agreed to come and be my co-director and producer. Even though her language, she's from the Western Arctic, she speaks a completely different dialect. But you'll see in the film that was actually worked out just fine in a very interesting way. So we finally get Navalik on board, and we meet her in Iqaluit before we fly up to Pond Inlet, and she didn't know about any of this material, and thanks to Janet Clark, who got us, who had done the retrospective of Susan in the art gallery, we got access to all of the scanned photos that were in the art gallery, and we reproduced these books to bring to the communities. Anyway, so we can just play this.
Rita, Julia, and Brenda. Brenda lives in Cambridge. Julia lives in Yellowknife, I think. Rita lives in Iqaluit. They're all mothers and grandmothers now. These sketches are so recognizable you could tell who they are. Because in small communities, everybody knows each other. Stella and Margie, yes. Look at Brenda Sidata and Peggy Annabluck from Iqaluit. Brenda lives in Cambridge Bay now. Peggy lives in Iqaluit. She's a grandmother and a mother now. And this is my cousin Lena, lives in Iqaluit, Coppermine. Susan says, Susan Ross. Lucy and Jennifer, Mike, Johanna. Lucy's passed on from cancer, but Jennifer, her daughter's still alive. You know, the ones from Coppermine are so recognizable, people know right away. Because that's how good she was, I guess, as a sketch artist. But people will recognize these sketches. They'll recognize the faces. People are grieving for their loved ones. And if they get a picture like this of their family, it's going to be part of healing.
We
Time
lost the
to-
video.
It's part of reconciliation that's being talked about in Canada. From residential school legacy, each of us are fighting mental health, depression, sadness, grieving, alcoholism, drugs nowadays. And little things like this, presenting to the families, will be part of healing. So things like this is really important. Because we never had cameras. The Inuit.
1 second. You didn't understand.
Maybe the other, yeah. I'm wondering if the other ones, we can download them.
Yeah, that one's downloaded.
Oh, okay, oh. Oh, because this is the, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And continuing. Sorry. for the-
Yeah.
People were too poor to have cameras. Nobody knew about money then. These girls are.
Anyway, until this goes on, yeah, so this was like our first day meeting with Navlik in Iqaluit. And
Nice cup of tea. Those days there was
she had never seen any of this
no
material.
drugs,
It was like so
no
remarkable.
crying. See, it says girls Coppermine. They'll be recognized right away. See, this coach here is our style of parkas. Ottawa. That's in Cambridge. She just passed away a couple of years ago. Very respected, loved elder, Pond Inlet and famous icebergs. Weekend camp, 15 miles northwest of Coppermine, 1977. How nice.
So yeah, so one of the, it was what really, one of the more remarkable moments of a remarkable trip. And we had, very few funds. So my son, Adrian Harpel, who also did the music and all kinds of stuff on Long Walk Home, he accompanied me to help out and do sound, of course. And I did the camera, and Navalik and I are co-directing. She's doing all of the interviewing and whatnot, and also just connecting us to community in the right way. It was like I just didn't expect that at all, that she would know all those people. And of course, the thing that we learned was that after her experience in Pond Inlet with Sheila, Susan just carried on, and she went almost every summer. And in fact, she made a friend in Coppermine, Qallunaat today, known as Qallunaat, and its Inuktitut name. She went there 7 years in a row. So there are so many sketches. And these sketches that she was looking at are only the ones that were donated to the art gallery. In fact, there are several entire sketchbooks from Coppermine. And we've digitized them all. And in fact, I've even given them I met people from Qallunaat, because Qallunaat is the neighboring community on the mainland to Cambridge Bay, where Navalik is from. And, people go back and forth by boat or dog team in the winter when it's frozen. Anyway, so we get up to Pond Inlet. Actually, this is the second trip I took in August but just to meet Philippa, just to give you an idea.
The sketches are a wonderful contribution because there's something that people can look at in a book like this, which is perfect because it attracts attention right away, and then people will open it because they see something of interest. And when they recognize faces and names, again, it causes the elders and the young people can then talk about who they remember, who they're related to, stories about them, things that happened. I think it's a wonderful way of connecting people of all ages. They're so nice because they're not just pictures of people. You've also got views of Hudson Bay Company and camping. My husband was adopted by his grandparents, so this would have been his younger brother by adoption, Mikisti. He's passed away now, sadly, but that was him. They live down at the bottom of the mountain over there. You guys go?
I don't know why it keeps jumping.
I think that was the end of it.
No.
No?
Oh, maybe I made a mistake outputting it. Oh. Okay. Well, we carry on because I've been talking too much anyway. Yeah, because that was only 53 seconds. Okay. Anyway, the thing that was like remarkable is I was interviewing her there when I was able to come back in August to accompany Navalik on a trip. Anyway, it was just like amazing to have her and to be able to like connect with everybody and leave all of that digital material and the that actual book, which was created from all the sketches, 3 sketches, and we even got a special sketchbook from Janet Clark, who had given one to Susan when she was going in 1995 with her son for the last time, and she actually we were able to get those. So now the next one is Regulae. When we had our initial first meeting with the community, we actually hired Regulae to make bannock. That was the bannock we were terrified was going to get jam all over our this beautiful book that was created painstakingly with much love by Alyssa Kuzik. She literally, with the scanned images, she worked with them in Adobe Photoshop, and then we printed them on sketch paper and we bound them in this book that you're going to see everyone has. And a friend of Navalik's in Iqaluit, before we left, sewed a sealskin cover on it, which was greatly appreciated by everyone. And this is her with her granddaughter, Jacinta. Susan almost always got people to write their names. So there's very few that aren't labeled, unless they were just a small sketch she was practicing with. And she paid everyone to pose for her as well. And she started that. So it was a professional relationship between. There was a on their trip, the last trip, and even in the first trip, they went to Clyde River, which one of the Flaherty's wives came from. And so a lot of those sketches from Clyde River went into this sketchbook. We didn't know. But immediately people in Pond Inlet, they just looked at the faces. They said, no, these people are from Clyde, which is really interesting. We had a special kind of like a repeat of having the book and Sheila's film footage at the hotel for a second time for people who were out camping. And we went through it frame by frame, and people wrote down everyone's name, and young people came and really connected with this book. Yeah, and this is Regale's mother-in-law on the right with the babushka. And of course, Navalik knew her. She knows everyone, even though she's from thousands of miles away. And we could just go right into the next one, and I'll just give as it buffers or whatever. And this one is Joshua Ariak. He's the brother of Lazarus Ariak, who advised us at the very beginning of this project. He's the mayor. He's the current mayor of Pond Inlet, and I don't know how well this is going to work, but of course, one of the things that was really interesting was that Navalik had asked him, was your family relocated? Now, that is an entire story all to itself. And if you ever have time, please watch the National Film Board of Canada film Martha of the North, which is about the relocation of the Flaherty family, among a few other families who were taken by convinced and pressured by the Canadian government to go and resettle in the very far north where no Inuk would ever live, in Grise Fjord and Resolute. And they put these families on a ship and then said, don't worry, You can, if you don't like it, if the hunting's not good, but we say it's fantastic, we'll bring you back. And they completely lied. The RCMP just dumped them off far away, a day's journey from the RCMP base, so that they would be forced to live in the old ways. Of course, there were no resources. The only real hunting was muskox, and that was you would go to jail if you killed a muskox. So they almost basically starved, and it was Joseph E. Flaherty, Robert Flaherty's son, who was adopted by an Inuk family after his mother died, and raised. He was first brought there, and then they wouldn't let him leave. They wouldn't let him phone. They would only tell him to write a letter and get Josephie and his family. So that family came, and the whole saga is in that film, and Martha of the North, and several books. And now, because those people were coming from Inukjuak, which is in Nunavik, which is in northern Quebec, on the Hudson Bay. It's not very far north. It's very far from the Arctic Circle. So those Inuit were very ill prepared to be living in a place where there was like 4 months of complete and utter darkness, and no food, no resources, no water. They would never have lived there. So what the Canadian government did was they also roped in families like Joshua's father, who was a special constable, who was sent with his family to help them adapt to that horrible situation. And so Joshua, in fact, was also born out on the land in that remote area. Now, one of the reasons that Canada did it, of course, was this was during the Cold War, and we wanted to assert our sovereignty over the Arctic, and we didn't want Greenland coming. Greenlandic Inuit, which were their cousins, who they could see literally, across the water, and many Greenlandic Inuit would come and do all their hunting and stuff. So that's one of the stories that Joshua tells us. And there was kind of a nice connection because Navalik's father was also a special constable and worked with the RCMP, helping save people. Oh, there's my 45 minutes. So anyway, I don't think this is going to work. So
It should be ready to go.
do you think so? Okay, we can.
Kisiani atate polisi uloma, polisi na kanaya loma. Teko there.
Oh, somehow the subtitles didn't come out. So I'll just explain it. Yeah, I guess the subtitles didn't come out. Anyway, one of the differences that we made, we'll have to skip this one for today because we're running out of time. And because I have one last one that I want to show, and just to finish up the discussion. And that is, we'll skip the Illiceri. Let's just go to Silent Cries. So Silent Cries, because of my work with Navalik, and she is a residential school survivor, she invited me to accompany her. She needs health support when traveling. So I accompanied her to the Pope's visit last July, for his apology. So.
Download and give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And that was like, we just finished that film. And I'm just showing a bit.
Every
You okay?
Yeah.
year during long weekend in September, that's when all the little planes start flying around Nunavut, and NWT collecting kids at camps. Soon as you hear that plane coming around, you know what was going to happen. Some of them hide, run away. But the parents were always threatened if their kids didn't get on that plane. And of course, most of us kids were gone from the little communities and camps. No more kids. All you could hear was mothers, grandmothers crying. Uvangana falalok. Tuluang na. Iqaluit yamin Nunavut. I was born in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, and before the town was ever built, so I was born in the old part of town in Cambridge Bay. And my mother is Rosie Nohak Kailep. She was a Kailep from Reindeer Station in NWT, just between Inuvik and Tuktoyaktuk, where that Reindeer Station is. My dad, Johnny Tuluang, he was a special constable with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. My parents were hard workers, and we had 11 biological siblings, and my mother adopted one girl. I'm named after my grandmother. In the 1920s, Inuit began attending Anglican or Roman Catholic Church.
Pause,
Central School.
pause for 1 second.
I was in school in Inuvik, which is hundreds of miles west, for 9 years or years.
Well, maybe we'll just give up on this. And anyway, that's going to be coming soon. One of the reasons I wanted to show you is because we used, we did a very long interview that first day with Navalik when we were showing her all those, her unexpected connections with all of those sketches that are, and the, from the art gallery and the paintings. And one of the sketchbook was not just people from the Arctic. Also, it was Indigenous people that she had also sketched beautiful portraits of. And there was one fellow in there that she looked at and she said, you know what, that just reminds me of the sanatorium. You know, like the same, same clothing and the sheets and the flannel and all that. Because when she was 3 years old, she had tuberculosis and she was sent away for an entire year to the Indian hospital sanatorium in Edmonton, Alberta. And where they had created, there was a whole, in the 50s and 60s, there was this, they built all these hospitals and they were specifically for this tuberculosis. And the children, I just started reading about it when I was researching for images of it, and it was like horrific. Anyway, she was 1 year in there in a big crib, as she says it, with all these other little kids. And then when she was cured of tuberculosis, then they sent her right away to Inuvik. And in Inuvik, they built a huge school, the Federal Day School, and there were two like hostels. I guess they could have like over 200 kids each, and one was Anglican and one was Catholic. And there have been many priests and other workers in the, especially in the Catholic one, that have gone to jail for all, that their atrocities have come out in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Anyway, so she was 9 years going to that school, only able to go home at in the summer months, those 2 brief summer months. So all the kids were cleaned out of those camps and those communities. And in fact, Pond Inlet was created as a community to sort of cajole or force people to come out of their regular way of living in these nomadic kind of camps where you go here to follow the caribou and there for the fishing and all that entire cycle of journeys that people had until like not that long ago. You know, it's way less than 100 years ago. And so people were being brought into those communities and with the express purpose of taking the children away and, getting the Indian out of the children. And so there are very few Inuit children or people, elders of Navalik's vintage, which is like pretty well my vintage, which was a big shock for me for everything I thought I knew about the residential school thing. But the thing that struck me the most was I can't imagine as a parent having my children taken away. Imagine if you had like 11 children, they're all taken away and only you have a brief time. I mean, that is, that changed for me a lot of things for this entire story, because what Susan and Sheila were experiencing and witnessing, and with all their adventures, but also and their art, they were also seeing a complete change of lifestyle for the Inuit people. And then the repercussions. And Sheila is very, her book, One Woman's Arctic, of course, there's a few things that are, dated, in some language or whatever, but she was just very sensitive, non-judgmental, and really wanted to learn. And I think it still holds, many stories. And we have all of those elements that we're going to be weaving in to this really great film. And I'm so glad that you're able to come out and hear about it. And I will be looking forward to screening it here in Thunder Bay. Of course, after we screen it in Pond Inlet. Thank you so much. And I guess I can take questions, right?
Yeah, did want to come up and is remind everybody who's joining us online, if you have questions, put them into the Q&A function and we'll read them out loud in the room. But otherwise, everybody just as you wish.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
When will the film be finished?
Well, with all the delays and pandemic and everything, and actually doing the Silent Cries, which is a 17-minute long film, but we have committed to doing it in English, Inuktitut, and Inuinnuktuq. And there are not that many speakers left of Inuinnuktuq, which is Navalik's language, which despite all of her years in residential schools, she made all the efforts, and she graduated from language courses, and she speaks her language. And she's been writing a column in her language for the Nunavut News for the past 30 years almost. So that kind of sidetracked us. And that film we've just finished, all 3 versions. And this film, we're in the middle of editing it, and we hope it will be completely done very early in the new year. And then probably screened a little later after we organize screenings in Pond Inlet, of course. Sure.
Which art gallery are Susan Ross's sketches and other?
The Thunder Bay Art Gallery. Okay. Yeah. And we did an interview with Janet Clark, and it was just at the moment where the art gallery had received, I think, 3 paintings donated, and they were like new acquisitions along with some paintings by a few other artists. And yeah, so they have a huge collection. In fact, I think it's one of their biggest collections is all those sketches and a few paintings and some of her etchings. But most of like her etchings and paintings, which she did from the sketches in the winter when she was not visiting these communities, they were sold. And when the retrospective was done many years ago, people contributed their paintings that they had. So, but there's something very, very special in these, like literally there are thousands and thousands of sketches. There's, I don't know, maybe 100 sketchbooks and then loose sketches and then all the sketches that are in the art gallery. But they're all housed here, all the sketchbooks and the digitized sketchbooks and all of that. And we have another project with Friends of the Finnish Labor Temple, which we created these like real memories, news from the giant, sports from the giant that we brought around to care homes. But I learned from Martha Flaherty and Navalik that in Ottawa, there is, it's not a specific hospital care home specifically for the Inuit, but because there are no facilities for elders or anyone who's got like dementia or mobility issues, there's just no facilities in their community. So all these elders are forced to live in Ottawa in these hospitals. Our film, we had very few days to shoot because the flight to, you could travel around the world for the cost of airplane tickets to Pond Inlet or Cambridge Bay. So for families to go and visit their elders is almost impossible. So the project we've applied for is to bring these sketchbooks, again, recreated sketchbooks from the very many communities for Indigenous people in Thunder Bay who find themselves in care homes, and then in Ottawa. Anyway, we're hoping we get funding from New Horizons. Yeah.
How did Susan Ross communicate with all these people that she was sketching? Did she have a translator or did she learn any of the language?
Yeah, well, they first spent a decade going to Ojibwe and Cree communities, and both of them, they did their best to learn. Especially Sheila, there's lots of efforts, and they, and the same thing when they went to a Pond Inlet, and they studied up. Like Sheila read every book she could, and they got a grammar. They looked at people who are experts on it, and they were living as they had done several other places, in the kindergarten. And in the kindergarten, there was the syllabics of words everywhere for the children. And so they were kind of learning from that too. But also they had, they approached an elder to get lessons. Yeah, and Susan, she not only did she go there and sketch, she also encouraged other people. And especially Indigenous artists here, that she also, she was like a part of a community, and they were supporting each other, and so she wasn't just going there and doing sketches. And many people and communities, they received those sketches as well. So it's not like she was sort of like some fly on the wall tourist. Like they went. What the film footage of Sheila's, which is a pity we couldn't watch any of it, but they went on there was like the last dog teams, and they went to the flow edge. They wanted to go hunting narwhal. And Sheila describes like the hairiest, like like if you're going on there, those hunters, they're not giving you any chance. If you fall off and fall through the crack, well, that's it. And she describes it so well. And then just to get that, all these things that you would never think about. Of course, they're there in the summer, 24 hours, clocks, just throw those out the window. Kids are playing, it's 2 a.m, and then maybe you're sleeping, and then you're this and that. And it's just all the things that they observed and learned by participating. They weren't there studying, they were, yeah.
There's just a request from the online attendees to repeat the questions before they're in.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yes.
Kelly, I was just wondering about the forced relocation to Grise Ford from northern Quebec. Had you been to Grise Ford, and what did you think of that?
No, I got near because Oh, okay. So the question was, have I been to Grise Fjord and been able to visit it? And no, I haven't. But I did get near it because I was able to accompany Navlik on a cruise ship last summer, and that's how we got a opportunity to go back to Pond Inlet. But we went through the Northwest Passage and all the way to Greenland. Because I teach a course at Lakehead, it's history and film, and it's from a perspective of like Indigenous filmmakers and Indigenous and also slaves on screen. But so one of the films that I show is Nanook of the North, and then I show Martha of the North, and I think it was Tom Ross who must have told me. Because it was like quite a shock, I think, for the Flaherty family, the legitimate Flaherty family that were based in the U.S. and Michigan, that there were Inuit Flahertys, and a bit of denial there. But then Susan, more than anything, embraced that family, and they still have maintained those friendships and family connections. So, but if there's several really, really good books. And one written by, I think it's Larry Outluck, and he was one of the children of the people who were relocated. And Martha Flaherty is actually doing another film about it. They were just filming it this year. So it's a story, the government has never apologized for it. They haven't apologized. Yeah.
What year was that?
It happened in the mid 50s. Yeah. And but that film, which she participated in, and a really great filmmaker made that film with Martha, and I recommend it. Martha of the North, National Film Board of Canada. Well, I think we've taken up all kinds of time, so thank you so much for your support. And check out Friends of the Finnish Labor Temple. It's finishlabortemple.com. We have our Real Memories, which you'll probably all be interested in, a website coming soon, and of course rosiesofthenorth.ca. And thank you.
All right, I am the one person that stands between you and snacks and coffee and tea. So, so thank you all again for being here, and we apologize for some of the technical difficulties. There's a lot of moving parts on something like this. So, I would like to encourage all of you to visit the gift shop. It is that holiday season. Think about gifts for your loved ones. The latest edition of or a new edition of Northwest Company and Rebellion by Gene Morrison, or edited by Gene Morrison and now updated by some of our volunteers, is now available in the gift shop. I think that arrived today, so do check that out on your way out. And if you are a member of the society, you're entitled to a 20% discount during the month of December. So if you're not a member, consider doing that. Look at our upcoming events calendar. So on Sunday, 7 January is our President's Reception for the Society. So come out, as we'll be presenting awards and recognition to many of our volunteers. And then our lecture series, like tonight, will continue on the 23rd of January. We'll be hosting lectures from the Lakehead University's history graduate students, topics to be determined. And then on the 27th of February, Alan Campbell will be talking about his career in the logging industry and his other various roles in public health in Northwestern Ontario. And then on the 26th of March will be the Society's annual general meeting, and we'll also be presenting our biennial publications awards. And of course, our Taste of History fundraising dinner is coming up next year on the 5th of April, but tickets are on sale now. So if you want to get those early Christmas presents as well, do check that out. Thank you again to Lakehead University's Department of History for funding tonight's lecture. And thank you to all the museum and staff who make nights like tonight happen. And so I now release you to the public or to the refreshments, and have a great rest of your night.